So we have started contemplating on the Jagat Utpatti chapter in Tattva Bodha, which is in Guruji's day 10 and 11 talks. And that is broken into smaller topic-wise talks. So in our last couple of sessions, we've reviewed the aspect of what is the nature of knowledge. And we'll continue from that point onwards. So, Saravanan, are we supposed to contemplate on 53 or 52?
So 52 is where we finished. Kind of 52 and 53 also, it goes close to that, wherein we talked about the ways of knowing things, the direct and the indirect knowledge, and like how Paroksha, Anumana, Pratyaksha, and Aparoksha fall under, and like what is that, how does different kinds of knowledge help, right? And which is the highest form of knowledge, which is Aparoksha Anubhuti. And like even after knowing, even after acquiring knowledge, what happens if you are not able to live by that knowledge, which is where the error correction happens. And we are given the prescription of the three yogas: Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So let us begin from that point. Let's take the first question according to each one. Let us define these three yogas: Karma, Bhakti, and Jnana. So what is karma?
Yeah.
What is Karma Yoga rather?
Karma Yoga, yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, okay, I understand that I'm not this body, mind, and I am the consciousness. But then, like, how do I? But then I am always doing something all the time, right? I have a family to run. I have work to do, and like. I seem to be lost in that, and like every now and then I come and learn that okay, you are not this, right? So the question comes like, how do I apply this? When like I cannot be sitting idle and thinking about this, which is where the Karma Yoga talks about that. Yes, nobody can sit idle. The Prakriti itself makes everyone move, right? The point is to understand in that action, to understand like the reality, right? The reality, the reality being there is nothing to gain from any action that I am part of. Right? Understand that this is a very perfectly directed play going on, and whatever is your role, go and play that role 100%. And the Maya is such that like you will get attracted to a lot of things, but not fall for that by having desires. The moment the desires come, the desires tie you up, and like you lose freedom, because basically the mind starts working towards the desire and you lose sight of the whole thing, right? And the desire leads to strong vasanas, either you at the end of the day you either like feel happy for a short term for getting that, or you start feeling bad about if it doesn't work out, right? This is where the prescription is being given, like just do it, but like do not expect returns for every action, because only understand that the action is actually getting done through you, and you only have uh, the role to play it, but the outcome is not entirely on you. It is based on much bigger uh, uh, direction play. So
Okay,
so the
wonderful.
moment we
In
start,
what you are saying, one question, is desire the problem?
yeah. So so this is from my own understanding, learning of every day, where I see that uh, the desire, if it is not properly analyzed, right, then like I've seen that like you start like I start adding multiple desires, and the desire basically starts taking uh, my time, my energy, because I start trying to work on it, right? So the desire has to be, I feel, needs to be analyzed towards the highest uh, point. I can still, like, even to come and sit in the class actually is a desire, right? But that desire is a higher form than like having other desires of I want this, I want that, I want to do that, I want that, I want to I want that kind of experience, right? Where they will those the outcome of those desires will be like more of a short term.
Excellent.
Yeah,
So essentially you're categorizing the desires into, there is something where I want something, but what I get may be not a permanent nature. So convert those desires into something where I want something of a permanent nature.
correct.
Excellent.
Yeah, because this uh, I feel it's very much needed for someone like who is having a full-time job and working, and like being a grihastha. Like you always, when I mingle with uh, everyone, and like I can see that like I can easily get carried away by the conditioning of the society and like start running with them. Okay, but then like I have to stop and say like, no, why is that? Why should I do it? What is that? Right? Rather, I may or may not get, but that is not the point. Rather, like, do it as you have been assigned. Take whatever role has been given, but like do it perfectly, and leave the rest. And like there is no these recently I started trying to tell myself like, I think you introduced it, that my if I'm working, my boss is not XABC. Consider that like uh, Krishna is my manager. Okay, he has asked me to do this. Will I go and like debate with him and like, no, I don't want this, can I do this, or like give me more? No, there is a reason why I have been assigned what I'm doing. I'm like, just do it, right? And that kind of, I feel like that the karma yoga basically guides towards that, to understand and don't fall for it, because the maya is such that like nothing can give permanent like happiness, after which like one will not go after. Whatever I get, there will be the next.
Excellent. What about Padmaji's view of Karma Yoga?
Yeah, I also have thoughts on the similar lines, that we have to do the actions, whether we want or not. It keeps happening. That is Prakriti. And also, what I feel is, when the action is done without thinking about the outcome, is when it is like surrendered to the Lord Himself. And most of the time, I think we don't have a choice whether we want to do certain things or not. But anyway, we have to do it, is another thing that I have. I mean, from my personal experience also, applying this karma yoga. So there are certain things that you might not want to do, but still it goes on, because it happens that way is what I feel. Definitely, inaction cannot be part of karma yoga. Action is the only way to do it. And one question though I had, sir, that when we talk about Sankhya Yoga is mostly like you need the proper jnana to do it. But for Karma Yoga, what I feel, I mean, I don't know if my understanding is correct, but for Karma Yoga, essentially the jnana part is not necessary, is what I feel. Karma Yoga can be done by anybody. And whether they are having a knowledge of what is Karma Yoga or what this, even the Gita as such, Karma Yoga is something which is done by each and every being, I feel.
Okay, let's look at it this way. What is jnana?
Jnana, for I mean, as far as I am concerned, jnana is something where you have the understanding of whether what you are doing is right or wrong, and whether it is really necessary or not, and what kind of action should be done is what is the right kind of action, rather, is what is jnana to me.
Even when let's say somebody hasn't read Gita, but
Hmm.
if let's say they have to cook idli, do they have jnana or not?
Yeah, but that is like how to make it, right, sir? But whether to make it or not, that doesn't need that, right?
So
I mean,
therefore,
essentially,
can we
if
say
I
that? Can we say that even the making of idli is a kind of jnana, but it is not atma jnana? So there are different kinds of jnana.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I couldn't clearly put it. What I mean is, like, see, why do you make that idli? Because somebody is hungry. If I am the person who's responsible to feed 5 people, then I have to essentially make it, whether I know how to make it or not. I will figure out a way to do it, because the responsibility to feed them lies on me.
Excellent.
Right?
Excellent.
So
which means
yeah.
that to know something is necessary, correct? And that is your inherent ability.
Yeah.
Your inherent ability is to know. And that is how you are able to accomplish things in life.
Correct.
So the only difference is a karma yogi starts looking at what is the purpose of the action rather than just the action by itself. So the purpose generally turns out to be, I am hungry. Body drives my action. I am hungry. As a little baby, I cry. As a body, if I say I am a body, I cry because there is a hunger, very deep sensation of hunger. So I cry. Somebody puts something in the mouth and that goes away. Oh, this is what I need to do. What? Cry every time. That is how I start off. Every time there's a funny feeling here, I cry. There is still a doing. But is there clarity in that doing? That is the difference that Karma Yoga brings. So in order to bring that clarity then, is it necessary to examine, even if I'm doing idli, is it necessary or not necessary to examine the purpose of it?
It is necessary, but don't you think that there are a lot of actions taking place which doesn't necessarily involve jnana? I mean,
that is why the action is done in ajnana. So an action done in ajnana binds me. Any action done in ajnana binds me. I am donating 50,000 rupees. I put a photo and I say, I did it. So that is still an action, worthy action. From the world's eye point, good action, but still a binding action. So
okay, then I have one more question here. Sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah, good.
No, so if you are saying that, so this thing will apply even to the karmas that I am doing towards my own family, right? Like I might go to for example, if I take myself, or if I take even you, like you have a certain responsibility and duty. I have the same, Saravananji has the same, but sometimes don't we go above it, in the sense, I don't know how to put it, but for example, if I take my example of my son itself. So I as a mother is doing certain things, but then if he's not able to get so much marks, or say I feel that he's not studying enough, then don't I push him forward, right? Is it not like extension of that karma, to the extent that maybe even I am crippling him by constantly pushing without him wanting to do that action?
Okay,
Is that
that is
even
why
the right thing?
let us get the right clarity.
Hmm.
In action, see, first of all, action done without the right knowledge can lead to bondage.
Hmm.
That is why, in our tradition, even for a lay person, the idea of karma is very deeply ingrained in the society. See, what we call as jnana is not something that somebody has to come and sit in front of Bhagavad Gita and learn. This jnana, that what you sow, so you reap, is not from the book called Bhagavad Gita. It is existential knowledge.
Correct.
So that knowledge comes into the deeper experience of a person who may be just doing farming. He may not have learned Sanskrit and sat in front, and may not be putting a label called, oh, this is jnana, and what I am doing is through jnana. But still, experientially, that jnana is there. So jnana is not information, jnana is deeper in action. So it is there. So therefore, let us understand now, what is that binds us in action? So there are two kinds of actions. Kamya karma, I want, and nishkama karma. Okay, what is that I? We have to be very, very clear. When that I is, this, my body and my own satisfaction of the ego, that is always a kamya karma. Why am I pushing my son? As a parent, what if others tell me, you've been a bad father, you've been a bad mother? I don't want that insult. Yeah, I was a number one student in the school. How can my son be coming last? No, not at all. So the motive, the intent of that desire is, I still. Now let us take the other viewpoint. Why do I want my son to do well? He has to realize the value that when he does something with extreme involvement and dedication, that is the nature of life. And everyone should aim for that excellent. What is excellent? Whatever is the best possible by them.
Yeah. So how do you do that? That's my thing. Like without being selfish, or it is not about me, but how do you make someone realize that?
So you are not being selfish there. What is that you are? Why are you doing that? You want the best to be brought out in your son. For whose sake? Not to go and blow the trumpet and beat the drum that my son, my son, my son, but to help him realize that he has the potential to be the best possible, whatever that is.
Yeah.
So the power is within him. So you are helping to bring out the power. When a seed has to sprout, as a farmer, you may have to remove some muck. You may have to do some, maybe when it is a little, plant, if something comes and eats it, it is destroyed. So you may have to protect it. So you are doing that for whose sake? For protecting that plant, so that the plant can be of benefit to everyone else. The contribution you are making is to the greater good of the society. When your child goes on to become a wonderful, whatever that he does in the life, let's say a doctor, let's say an engineer, let's say a scientist, let's say a singer, let's say a teacher, let's say a a politician. But when he goes with the attitude of, okay, I have to do my best. In every role, there is a best that is possible. In every role, what is the best as a politician? Make money or offer service. If he becomes one like that, what a wonderful example. See, today, many of us look up to somebody like Modi because he's a wonderful example of a politician. So, isn't that a contribution by his mother?
Yeah, definitely.
So, where is selfishness in that? Yes, there is a selfishness. In what sense? The completeness as a self, all as a self, not just me, not as a me. Okay, he's there to protect me. That me has got expanded to the whole. So that is a nishkama karma. So kamya karma to nishkama karma. So they both are desires only, but one is me kind of a selfish, another one is unselfish, meaning what? For the greater good. To then naishkamya, meaning what? Non-doership. Who is the doer? Lord is the doer through this instrument. So kamya karma binds because it is selfish. However great the action may be, from the viewpoint of the society, it still binds me. In other words, anything done with the attitude of I am the body, I am the mind, will bind. Meaning mind, again we have to be clear. Mind means what? The ego of the mind. You know who I am? You know, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm the blah, blah, blah. All these transient roles are the collection of the mind, no? So when I do the action as to satisfy that or to satisfy this, then it is a kamya karma. Then you may wonder, okay, then I have to eat to protect this. Why are you eating? So you're eating just so that this can survive. It can be healthy. Why? Because it is of value to so many others. Why this should be preserved? Only as long as it is valuable to somebody else. What is the use of this if it is not of value to somebody else today? I take so much. I'm taking the air, water, light, so much of things from the earth. What did I do today to return it back? I carry a lot of debt from this existence. When is that I have repaid? So I'm protecting this only to repay that debt. So there is a kamya karma. Kamya karma always binds me, because I have the sense of I am the doer. So it binds. Then nishkama karma. Do everything as an attitude of service to serve others. Whatever may be. I'm cooking. For whose sake? It may be for you have a name, my son and my husband. But what is your son? Your son is not actually your son. Your son is part of the existence, and you have been given the great privilege of protecting and nurturing that. Your son belongs to the existence. He is here to fulfill his own karma and to find his own way of liberation. And you have the greatest honor and privilege of being part of that wonderful flower and its life. You are that farmer. You are that gardener. And he is part of this garden called the earth or the world, where many other flowers are there. So by showing an example of how a flower can be nurtured, you are the greatest mother that can ever be. So it is not a kamya karma. Then it becomes a nishkama karma. Then realizing that Naishkarmya means what? Non-doership. I'm not the doer. So see, in all the three, there is still doing. But the clarity of the doing is what makes all the difference. That is why Krishna again and again reminds us, there is nothing equivalent of jnana. Jnana doesn't mean sitting in front of Bhagavad Gita and reading. Is this wisdom not found in our culture, even in a village? You will hear this in their own way, by their own experience of life. So that is jnana, recognition of the truth. Having the clarity about the truth is jnana. Not as a concept, but as a deeply imbibed action is actually truly jnana. Does that bring clarity to the questions?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So let's move on then. So we started with karma yoga. What is karma yoga? Now let us understand each of our views about bhakti yoga.
Yeah. So I also want to share on this how one can explain to someone. Basically, it starts with someone like saying, "Oh, okay, I am not understanding what's going on, or like I'm not happy with whatever is happening." Right? So when and I want to understand, I want to know what is going on, what is the purpose, why am I doing all these things, right? I think that's where like it is easy to start with karma yoga, which everyone is part of, with a small correction to the approach of how each one is doing the action, right? So it is the easiest way for or the first step for someone to move from um, uh, doing karma, uh, but doing it as kamya karma, to first of all like do the right things. Okay, people will always say that I am doing it because I'm going to get something. But start with doing the right things, not the wrong things. Sakamya, right? Like good action. And then from there, uh, okay, so move to the next level of, okay, without expecting, start doing it. And then the highest form I feel is the
Naishkarmya.
Inashkarma, where like inaction in action, right? That's what we say, right? Like there is, I am doing a lot of things, but I don't have that, but I don't project that like I am doing it, but it is happening. And same way, there is one more thing they say, right? Uh, action in inaction. Like I may not be doing it, but explicitly, but like I will be getting a lot of things moving around, right? So it is the first.
Usually put as action in inaction, inaction in action.
Yeah, inaction in.
So meaning what? Meaning I am not the doer.
I'm not the doer.
And who is the I here? The little I.
The body mind. Yeah.
So clarity that I am not the doer, but still there is so much of happening.
Yes.
When there is so much of happening, I am at absolute rest. So the example of the fan and the dead center. So the dead center is at absolute rest at all times. But still everything is happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is the yeah. So it's very beautifully done in such a way that the first step is given as a prescription. Okay, you are doing all these things. Okay, just a correction. Start seeing it this way. Right. The moment and so that way the karma yoga for a true seeker who's trying to understand and who's trying to willing to take the next step, Karma Yoga is easy to climb up, right?
And just to add to what Padmaji was saying, no, is there no jnana? You know, the jnana is one is experiential through your own observation of life. But look at the culture of India. Bhagavad Gita is living in different ways in all different subcultures of India. You go to a small village, there are some old ladies or some old people will be singing some lavani. They'll be chanting some vachanas. You know, somewhere or the other, spiritual jnana, atma jnana, is deeply ingrained in the Indian psyche. That is why they say to be born in India is actually a privilege, because you are exposed to the highest liberating truths in the simplest possible ways right from the get-go. There is a vachana, a simple word, kaya kave kailasa. Many people have found a lot of freedom and peace with just that one simple statement of Sri Basavanna. Kaya kave kailasa. Whatever you do, there is liberation. That's all he has said. So please continue, Saravanan-ji.
What was that phrase meant to? Like, whatever you do.
Kaya kave kailasa. Kailasa means what? Place of Shiva. Okay. How is the place of Shiva? How can place of Shiva be? Completely happy, healthy, peaceful, no?
So whatever you do, that's the heaven. Okay.
In doing only, there is that Kailasa.
Okay.
But I have to still put my mind. See, it is still an unsolved puzzle. If I just blindly repeat like a Xerox copy, no, Kaya kave Kailasa, Kaya kave Kailasa, will not work. I still have to apply that intelligence. Okay, what is Kailasa? How can Kailasa be there in whatever I am doing? So great masters have given little puzzles.
Yeah.
And it's like the pill. Once when you take the pill, it will destroy you.
It also basically gives the means that like being here in the moment, doing what you are is the best thing, and like you don't have to think about the future of outcome or the past of what happened when I did it last time. Yeah. Okay. So that being in the
so
here.
Like that wisdom, don't we hear wisdom?
Yeah, correct.
In whatever part you go, because that is a deeper existential reality. And it is not also to say that it's only in India. You will find it in many other native cultures, whether it is the Native American culture, the Native Mayan culture. So because the human nature is to be part of nature. And nature's nature is to be very, very wise and to be very, very kind. That is nature's nature. Only when we, meddle with it, like how we have done in the last few hundred years, we start seeing ramifications. Otherwise, it is deeply ingrained in all cultures. It's a deeper human possibility, human potential. And fortunately in India, it has manifested in 100 different ways. Yeah, please continue, Saravanan-ji, your view on.
So the Karma Yoga, basically that's where we started. The first step for anyone to willing to do the self-correction, to understand, yes, you are doing, but like there is a slight difference to how to approach what you are doing and what needs to be done, right? So once this is Karma Yoga basically starts helping to refine the individual, right? And Karma Yoga is still it is more on like it is more on the individual, and the one that runs to in parallel is the Bhakti Yoga. Usually like mostly in the society, like there is religion, there is God, right? Stay connected with that, so that like the surrender part happens there, right? You, when like the individual thinks that like everything is possible, I am doing it, and the bhakti helps in saying like with this limited body, what you are trying to do, okay, there will be limitations with this body, right? But by surrender, like you basically can go beyond. You will go beyond the limitations of the body, and um, uh, it also um, so yeah, so so you'll still start with the duality, like I am this limited being, and I go through all these problems, and there is the supreme being, uh, seen as the perfection of, and like complete opposite of who I am. So it starts with that, uh, uh, but that is the first step again, that yes, so go start with that thing, that like yeah, uh, and like the more connected you are, like the bhakti yoga keeps you in the right track. It's like a fence for the plant that is growing up. That's how I see bhakti yoga.
Wonderful. Padmaji's view?
Yeah, so bhakti. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. So for me, what I understand by bhakti yoga is one thing is to believe that whatever is complete faith, I would say, complete faith and surrender in the divine, and whatever is happening should be surrendered or offered to Him. Whatever we do, any of our actions, whatever we do should be surrendered to Him. Because whether we want to be in control or not, one of the important aspect is we are never in control. So if something is happening, that is the way it is supposed to happen, and that is how it should happen. And if we think of it as something that the divine has ordained, then there is nothing to complain about, or find a lacking in that. So whatever I have is complete in all sense, is what I need to have to get to where I am supposed to go, is how I see it. So in that sense, I think one of the most important part of bhakti yoga is to treat everyone equally, because you see Him in everyone, whether it is your friend or enemy. And obviously seeing an enemy as someone seeing him in an enemy is very difficult, and that is the challenging part, I think. So enemy could be anyone, but that is the challenging part, I feel. But to treat everybody in the same way, and if you see him in an enemy also, that means whatever they do to you also, you are in the same way. That is where the sthita pragyatva comes, I feel. That the one who is not moved or changed by anything that is happening around him. So what I feel is, as this thing becomes very difficult, because the mind is the one that add colors to all these whatever experiences we have, the best way to uh, control the mind is only by bhakti, I feel. Because when you are immersed in Him, or every action of yours is immersed in Him, or you do it for Him, then you don't think about, or your mind essentially doesn't be very vagrant and try to think about whether I should be doing this for this person, whether I should not be doing it. that kind of questions, I think it stops. It is a process. I think it's more like a practice, I feel, because it cannot come suddenly to us, and it is not very easy because all the other sense organs are easier to control than the mind. So what I feel is, to the best tool to control the mind is bhakti yoga, I feel. Whatever our mode might be, we might be chanting, or we might just be offering, or we might be saying lot of mantras, shlokas on a daily basis. So that is kind of easier to calm the mind, I feel, bhakti yoga. So that is my take on, yeah. Bhakti.
Excellent. So essentially, what is that actually creates various issues for us in life?
Mind only, I feel.
In the mind also, mind is a wonderful and a fantastic capability. Mind is not the issue. It is like saying that, okay, knife is the issue. No, in a certain sense, knife is the best possible tool. So mind is not the issue. In the mind, there is an idea of who I am, the so-called ahankara, ego. That ego has to be refined. That ego thinks that, this is limited.
Yeah.
So that limitedness has to become unlimited.
Unlimited.
Then the same instrument, same knife is wonderful, best possible tool for the benefit of the world. So bhakti is the simplest and the sweetest way to be part of this wonderful existence. When I realize how small and how incapable I am, and whatever ability, whatever that flows is part of a bigger phenomena. And to be part of that bigger phenomena and to be awestruck, like how our teenagers say, awesome, like that awestruck, to be awestruck with how wonderful this entire existence is truly bhakti. Offering my little sense of, whatever I am, offering that at the feet of this entire existence's creation. Looking at, for example, when you listen to your own children, just listen to them. It's such a wonder. How can those little children speak such high, profound things in such ease? Especially, as part of our learning process, no? When you're interacting with 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds, what kind of a marvelous insight they have about life in such simple ways. We all have seen many videos where that little girl is saying, I don't want to eat meat. She doesn't offer too much of rational explanation and science and whatnot. Very simple, heartfelt. Isn't that the greatest quality? And to learn from her, I seem to think I know so many facts. I will argue protein, what protein you should have, B12, it's missing in plant. Like that is the adult's mind. But that little child has a very simple feeling-based clarity about what is the right thing to do in life. Who is a greater teacher? Me, with all the science, or that little child? So, like that, surrendering to the wonderful phenomena of life, and to learn from everything, and to be part of everything without being a resistance. To be part of the flow is bhakti. Because only in true bhakti, in that moment of bhakti, where see how wonderful, nice you have felt when you have said, okay, well, all that I am doing is at the feet of the Lord. May the Lord take care of all the rights and the wrongs. This instrument, when it is doing the action, is always limited. But may the best flow. May the best happen. So then there is no more worries about what is that is it right or wrong. is like the bhakti of Bedara Kannappa. Bedara Kannappa, you all know the story. He offered Lord his own eyes. But before that, he would go to the Lord and he would offer the meat and the Archaka came and said, Ayo, what are you doing? So Bedara Kannappa, there's a wonderful song. I'm sure it is there in all the languages. In that song, it goes, Bedara Kannappa is singing, I know no Shastras, I know no Vedas, I know no Puja Kramas. All I know, Lord, is that you are the most kind. And this is the best I could do to offer to you at this point of time. Please forgive if there is a mistake. Because I know not. There, you are at peace with what is happening. In that surrender to what is happening, moment to moment, then there is no more question. There are no more doubts. A little baby in the stomach feels very cared and comfort, and has the same feeling when she holds the mother. Has absolute trust on the mother. Absolute. It is not a conditional trust. Absolute trust. Kanakadasa once asked his father, or his father asked him, who grows the food? He was working in the farm. Kanakadasa said, of course, father, you. Because he has seen his father always go to the farm and put the seeds and put water and do all the things. Then his father took him to a forest. Who takes care of them? So Kanaka realized, oh, there is something else. My father doesn't come and work here, but something else. So like that, it is a divine that has put all the connections together in the most perfect way, in the most synchronous way. Whatever happened was for good. Is happening, is for good. Will happen, will be for good. Absolute no worries. Because that is how it is. There is nothing called as a bad. The Divine Mother doesn't ever do anything bad to a child. From the thinking mind, it may appear like, oh, there is something bad happening. No, but in all situations, there is so much to learn and grow. So it's only for the growth and for the blooming of the fullest potential that the existence is. Like Prabhuji keeps saying, no, university. University. This is we think of it as a universe, but it's actually university. Unlike the college, here we are learning every moment. There is constant lesson and refinement, so that your inner, deeper, divine potential manifests. Because each one has a divine seed. How it can be of value to the world? Only when it is nurtured. And only in the care of a mother can the right nurturing happen. A loving and kind and caring mother. Not talking about the gender, the motherly feeling. So that surrendering to that highest power and to do everything as an as a fulfillment of the inner potential given by the divine. Because I don't know English. I did not invent English. Right now, even to speak this, so many have contributed. I don't know how each and everything works. So how is it all working? How can I stake my claim and say that, I am saying this? What is it I am saying? What am I saying? How can I even make the sound? So realizing that this I am nothing. I'm not anything. How can I do anything? And that naturally brings us to the next. What is Jnana Yoga?
Yeah. Yeah, that I'm not doing anything very strong, because like even our own body, it just functions. Like, do I know how things are working inside? Do I like, as Guruji says, lift your hand. I think I am lifting the hand, but then like there are so many things that have happened to lift the hand. So in Bhakti Yoga, that one thing I've seen is like, uh, the roles are very clearly clarified. You can be a farmer, you can be a businessman, you can be healthy man, and then there is a divine. Under the divine, everyone is like a devotee. That's it. You are standing there, right? So that kind of points you to that. Hey, you know what? That's a role. Then you guys are playing, right? The God didn't say that. Oh, okay. The businessman, you come first. No, he didn't say, right? Right? And also. The the Bhakti Yoga gives the taste of the ultimate, the peace, because in Bhakti, the small I, the ego, temporarily dissolves, and like we feel the merger, the effect of the merger with the one, right? And we suddenly feel that, oh, okay, so I go to temple, I or like I pray, I feel good. Okay, so that's indirectly showing you the Bhakti Yoga helps to give you that the taste of it. Okay, uh, when you say I, you are moving away from the reality, from the divine. Okay, and like when you say you, and like I am coming, then like I can see that dissolving of the I, and like merging, and that effect, right? Yeah, so that way, um, even if one is not ready for jnana, like karma and Bhakti Yoga basically, like, um, at least in the level of the degree of samsara, like they are closer to the one who is in jnana. And I feel with these two, basically the individual gets ready um, with our starting first part, right? You start the Sat Sampatti, you start getting ready. The prerequisites are getting done, and the vessel is being cleaned. Now, like, okay, the jnana, the ultimate. Okay, you have done this. Okay, now understand who you are. Ask the question, who am I? Right? That's where jnana starts. Right? So yeah, so it's like, uh, you have the slate written like all over, and like you have to clean it to get the real knowledge, and that's where jnana yoga comes. And like, so all the three has to go together, but definitely the first two are the karma and the bhakti yogas, and then we get into the jnana yoga to start contemplating on, oh, okay, yeah, I can see the point that there is this, and now I want to understand more, and then like finally leading to uh, the unlimited, limited to the unlimited, I versus him, to like one, right? I think jnana yoga finally takes us to that ultimate ultimate place.
Excellent. But one clarifying question. When you say bhakti and karma have to come first and then only jnana, so there is a certain order, there's a certain sequence. So how do you make that statement?
I feel like for some jnana is at the highest peak for someone to just directly start with like not not involved in karma yoga or not involved in bhakti yoga. Suddenly they may not be ready to appreciate what the jnana yoga is trying to say. In the sense, like, if your karma is, if your actions are not aligned, then like you may not be able to even if I give you the right thing, it may not, one may not be able to hold that. So it needs to be aligned as well, that like it's not possible that like I will go and read something and then like I will do something else. Yeah, so that's where I felt like yeah, it's not I agree that like it's, I'm not saying that like one has to become a complete 100% karma yogi, 100% bhakti yogi to jnana, but at least like to some extent, like they have to start getting into this. Okay. Like so that the slowly the individual starts appreciating and will be able to grasp the
Can
jnana.
it be then said that it really depends upon the nature of that individual mind?
Mm.
So for example, the analogy given is that of a stick which you need to burn.
Mm.
If the stick is wet, it takes
Burn.
more time to
Yeah,
burn.
correct.
If the stick is very dry, immediately catches fire. So
Correct. Yeah.
yeah, so it really depends upon the
Correct. Yeah, that's true.
nature
That's
of the mind.
nature of the mind. Yeah. If someone, yeah, yeah. So if the jiva is already advanced, they may like that may in this life maybe as like Shankaracharya like directly become. Yeah. But yeah, but for the yeah, depending on the nature. Correct. Yeah.
Many children in the iLead program, really wonderful. The way they speak and what insights they have. At this age, what kind of profound clarity and questions they have. So in terms of our traditional way of looking at karma yoga, so because the idea that society has given us is there is a path. So step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 are in Ashtanga yoga. It is, you start with yama, niyama, dharana, like that. You go gradually, and then there's an ultimate thing called as samadhi. So again, we've been given a goal, because a goal-oriented mind thinks in terms of only a goal. But the ultimate reality is not a goal. It is what is. So recognition and acquisition are two distinct things. So true jnana is recognition and the job ends.
Then yeah, correct. Yeah.
And of course, then there is jivana dharma. How to apply that? That is where, see how long it takes for you to contemplate and go deeper into that one simple question: who am I? Okay, in deep sleep, who is that? So then extending that, very easy, you can come to that clarity, provided mind is calm enough, mind is stable enough to examine that question without the various impressions bothering it.
Mm.
So clarity is instantaneous,
Mm.
but application of that in moment to moment action is where refinement definitely is needed. So in
Yes.
a way, therefore, like you rightly said, jnana, bhakti, and karma are not three different things.
Different things. Yeah.
They are interwoven.
Yeah. 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 The, um, it's like almost like I feel like uh, every moment the contemplation is needed. Like um, or like you can fall away very easily. Um, yeah. So it's not about what I read, what I learn. It's about like, am I living that way? Right. So that's where all the three helps, and it. Uh, I feel like it's like I go through kind of test on a momentary basis to see that, like, do I strongly convinced with what I'm learning? Right. So uh, uh, otherwise, like if I am strongly convinced, then all my action should be aligned to what I am doing now.
Excellent.
Right. So
Uh,
yeah.
I may want you to consider this way of looking,
Mm,
like the prayer, Asato ma Satgamaya,
mm,
Tamaso ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. In every moment, what is the truth?
yeah.
That is what you are interested in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about really getting convinced. See, truth doesn't need convincing, because
Mm,
truth is.
correct.
When you
Correct.
realize truth is, where is the question of I have to be convinced about the truth?
Mm,
Truth
mm,
is.
mm,
So to realize the truth is what your every moment's endeavor is.
mm, mm,
What is the
mm.
truth in this?
Yeah. What is? Yeah. That's a good way of approaching. Yes. And the language. I agree. The language is has a very big effect, very strong effect. So the words one uses, yeah, yeah.
Let's hear to Padmaji.
Yeah. So, sir, I also have the similar thing that all three are interwoven with each other. However, I feel that whatever uh, is accomplished through karma yoga or bhakti yoga, it is also perishable, I feel. And that is why, we have to, we continue the search of the self. And when we realize that, then we realize him, and then we know that, you know, uh, there is nothing to be done or nothing to be, thinking about. Just do what is needed, and that's it. I think that is one thing. Um, yeah, so Jnana
Excellent. So
Yoga.
what you are essentially saying is,
Ah,
whatever is the outcome of karma and bhakti, if it is not made clear with jnana,
hmm.
the search may still continue.
Yeah, because see, like bhakti yoga also, a lot of people are devotional people, and but their intent to do that, like for example, if I am praying to God for my son, I might have a certain goal attached to it, right? That maybe give him good buddhi, or may he study well, and if I get that result because of whatever I am doing as a bhakti to the God, that is perishable. Again that is going to change. I might have a different purpose for doing bhakti again, even if it is relating to him only, not to me. It will still have a purpose, and that is again perishable. Again, that is going to get over, and something else is going to take its place. So essentially, I think it is all similarly karma yoga. If I am doing something for him today, it might be something. 10 years later, his needs might change, so I might do a different kind of karma for that. But the the search keeps continuing, because, and it has to continue, because that is not my ultimatum, right? Because for me, who I am is more important, because that is when my search completes, is what I feel.
Excellent.
The
Very good.
rest of the thing is just a journey towards it, I feel.
Yeah.
And also one more uh, thing what I have realized is, when we talk about this Shat Sampatti and all that Saravananji also mentioned, I think even to get there, I don't think it's our choice. It is that way for us in this lifetime, is what I feel. Otherwise, there are 5-6 people at your home and each one is different. Each one is not doing what you are doing, even though they are present in the same house. Probably even you might be sharing many things with them on a daily basis, but still they are not looking for what you are looking. So again, I feel there also we don't have any control. It is again ordained depending upon whatever our journey has been till now, which we don't know. I think that is one of the important part of Jnana Yoga, I feel, because you really don't know
That
how many births you took, what was your role, what all you have done till now. But all you know is you are here now and this path has come to you. So how I move in this is the only thing you can choose, I feel.
Yeah, Sharavanji, you
But-
wanted to share
yeah,
something?
but that would uh, uh, mean like one will not take any responsibility, right? So at the end of
No,
the
no,
day,
I don't
also,
mean by responsibility, Sarvanandi. What I mean is, uh, okay, if I have to give an example of Vijay sir or even Prabhuji, they live in the same apartment that I live. But till today, I haven't met Vijay sir. I haven't met Vijay sir. I haven't met Prabhuji. Vijay sir, at least I am communicating this much and I keep repeating to him. So at least he knows that I live in the same apartment. But Prabhuji, I don't think even Prabhuji is aware that I live in that apartment. Neither did I know. So I feel that the contact of Vijay sir itself came to me like that. And how do you meet somebody? Like because of Vijay sir, I have met you. I have met
so that
Shivaji.
would
All these.
basically, I would go this way, right? It all starts with the desire. Okay, so
But how
and
does the
again,
desire come? Everybody in your house is not having that desire, right?
right?
You have to be exposed to it in some way or other. It could be, some of it could be conditioning, but then say for example, if I believe that my mother is very devotional, my mother inculcated all these mantras and all from very young, but it was not specifically given to me. We are 3 siblings. So only I am mother, she will constantly encourage me when she listens to me, or when I share all these teachings, she is the one who will listen to me. My dad will also listen, but I have not seen him doing many ritualistic things, whatever may be the reason. I mean, he was occupied with work or whatever. Today he's doing a lot of, those kind of things now after retirement. But I feel that my mother is the base for all this from very young. But the same thing my brothers have not acquired. So, and neither are they continuing in that path. Again, could be because they are working or whatever. But the same kind of thing I'm observing even in my, where I have come. Like my husband is not very into it, but I know that he's very spiritual, because we both are Reiki healers. So I know that he is more powerful as a Reiki healer because he is very, very pure at heart. He doesn't have, many, what do you say? Like I would say that he doesn't put his mind so much into whether I should be doing this, or more of the fact that whether other people what they are doing, should they be doing that or not. I think most of our mind confusions arise from not only what we are doing, but what others are also doing. We evaluate that, but he is someone who doesn't do that. So I feel he's very pure that way. So I feel that he doesn't need to do like what, I chant so many mantras in a day. I do a lot of things, which I feel that will help me calm my mind. Okay. And chanting is one of the things. So if I have some confusion, I will leave everything and I will sit and chant for 1 hour and till my mind is, calm, or I will listen to something very devotional. All these things I will do. But I think he doesn't necessarily need that. So it's a gift, I feel. It's a gift. And
Yes.
everybody is not like that, is what
Yeah, then going back to the question,
Yeah.
which I've been thinking a lot recently, who is getting who liberation, right? I keep saying that I am this, I am the Atman, I am the Brahman, I am not this, right? Then there is only one, and the way I visualize is like there are this lot of small pieces of the mind, the sukshma sariras with lot of imprints, right? And the Brahman is the power of Brahman is, the light of Brahman is falling on that, and like one individual is coming, right? But that individual is not the real. It's a borrowed or like temporarily that individual has come up, right? But then like um, now the individual is not real. That Sukshma Sarira is also not not the, how should I say,
Not real or not permanent?
not it's jada. It's jada. It right. It by itself it cannot
Insentient.
do anything, right? Only when the power of Brahman falls on it, like you get this thing. And now I see that like then the what I the jiva has come. I am so when I use the word, I'm still in the body mind. Okay. So but what I'm trying to do is to relieve this or to clear this sukshma sarira of all the imprints, right? And like because once this body is done, the same Brahman is falling on it, and one more body will come. It is not that Saravanan. So who is the Saravanan? Now the question goes there, right? Is it like
No, but
when I say I am pure consciousness, then like I am the Saravanan, the pure consciousness, because then like there are no multiple Brahmans. There is only one Brahman. Okay, Vijayji says I am the pure consciousness. Saravanan says I am the pure consciousness. Padmaji says I am the right. But so we are moving from this this temporary jiva, from this point of from this viewpoint to this viewpoint, the other viewpoint, right? So then like
but, no, my thing is like what is your question? I'm not understanding. I can understand all this, but the thing
so you
is,
said right, it is not in our hands that
yeah,
one
it is.
gets into
Yeah,
this
I'll
jhana.
tell you why I'm saying that it is not in our hands is because if see if everybody is Brahman, right? We agree on that. If everyone is Brahman, okay, and if everyone has the ultimate goal of that only, right? To realize ourselves is the ultimate goal of any human birth. Correct? I mean, sir, please correct me if I'm wrong or if there is anything.
No, that's
Please
the
continue.
discussion
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So my thing is, if that is where everybody has to go, that is the ultimate goal or ultimate purpose of this existence, of our existence here, then why is everybody not going there is what is my thing.
Because of the imprint.
Yeah, so the thing is, imprints are coming, but not necessarily all the imprints are wrong. That also we have to understand. Again, we are
No, I'm not saying wrong. As long as there is an imprint, that jiva will go after those imprints.
Yeah, so that is what I'm saying. So today you are Sarvananji, okay. After this body goes, you are going to get some other body. But that
Not
Brahman.
me. Not me.
Yeah.
Because I am Brahman.
Yeah. So the Brahman has to go to that journey, right? It has to go through that journey. That is why there is a concept of life after death, or many lifetimes. So that is a journey, is what we say. Journey to what? Journey to that ultimate purpose, or journey to becoming that.
So it's like the specks in the space. the light is falling on the specks and like you start seeing the specks. Now, once the imprints are erased, those specks will disappear. The Brahman light falling on the speck, basically I have the opportunity to clear that speck. This is all I see, or I can continue to add more imprints, and like the speck can be there. And the only thing I feel is, if that speck is not relieved, there will be one more jiva will come out of that speck. Okay, and based on the imprints I am aware of now. I am aware of the imprints very clearly now, right? And based on and I can add to more imprints. I can add more to that by my action.
How do you
thoughts.
recognize whether you are adding or not? Aren't we
Every
adding
desire is
imprints
there.
every moment, every
Every desire.
action?
If I desire for one bigger car, or like somebody built like Taj Mahal like house, that's it. It gets added, and that imprint, another person has to come, another jiva has to work on it. Or I can relieve it, saying that, you know what, I'm happy with where I am. I'm not going to add any more imprints. I don't want to add, so that like I can make it easier for the next, if not now, the next jiva to for that speck to disappear.
So that is what I am saying. What I am saying is, where you are right now has come from there only.
Yeah.
The Saravanan in the previous
Yes.
lifetime, I mean, I'm not referring to you, but I'm just naming you so that it's easier to understand.
That speck. Yeah.
That speck has cleared whatever, and that's why you are here, is what I'm saying.
And that's exactly the point when you refer back to the Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Karna Sharira discussion. The very first statement starts that this body is because of the good deeds done in the past.
Yeah, correct.
So, see, among all the millions of varieties of life form, first of all, there is an inner evolution happening at a mind level. So, to arrive at this form, there is a outcome of the past action only. We know that, if there is a effect, there is a
Prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma.
Yeah. And that is essentially because of the good deeds. The point Padmaji is making is, even you acting on a good deed is by a kind of like a divine coincidence.
Yeah.
Versus what Saravananji is saying is, no, there is a ability to have a choice. That is the essential point Saravananji is bringing. In this moment, you have the choice to act this way or that way. This way leads you to liberation, that way leads you to bondage. So that is the point that Saravananji is saying. Padmaji is saying, no, it also seems to be like a grace. So in a way...
because the point that you're saying is right. You have a power to choose. But again, you have to have complete awareness to be in that moment to choose right, is what I'm saying.
Excellent.
Because most of our decision, it will either, I mean, if we put the mind, analytical mind, it will always think about, okay, this thing, if it has appeared in the past, what did I do? And what was the outcome? So should I take an action like that? Or it could be driven by any future that you want. Correct? Yeah.
See, that's why there is a wonderful little story, no? One Shishya goes to a guru and says, you've been teaching me this Vedanta, this Shastra for so long. I don't know, it seems so natural, but what is the greatness of this? So he says, okay, he gives him a stone and he says, can you find out the value of this, from that, he points to one store. He goes and comes back and he says, oh, they said, it's worthless. They don't even want to buy this. Okay, now go to this other store. He goes, he comes. So now they're willing to give me 100 rupees. Okay. Like that, he makes him to go to different stores. Ultimately, he goes to some store in a town and then he comes back and he says, oh, they're saying that, this is worth something which they cannot even pay. The only person who can pay for this is the king of this country. I didn't know, but so then the guru asks him, so what is that you learn out of this? It all depends upon who has the stone and what value they have about, or clarity they have about the stone. So how is this related to the discussion that we are having? Is it only grace, or is it there is a choice? Ramana Maharshi was also asked the same question. Ramana said, there is, you keep saying, Ramana Guru, that there is no free will, there is no free will. Then, even I have no free will towards even my liberation then. Even liberation is ordained. True. Liberation is ordained. In what sense? Everyone is destined to reach here. Every sound is destined to culminate in silence. Every form is destined to merge into the space. In that way, it is ordained. But in this moment, where you take the turn, that moment, that awareness is, that choice is with you. So you have free will in a very limited boundary. In this moment, you have the choice to take the step towards liberation or towards bondage. Now, Padmaji's question is, okay, when I was ignorant, how can I make that choice? True. Even in that ignorance, that's why self is self-evident. How does a child know what is kindness? Has no rational thinking part. Inherently it knows. Inherently it feels love. Has somebody taught? No, it is inherent. So whatever is natural, you gravitate towards that. As simple as that. Because it is inherent. That's why your inherent nature is Sat, Chit and Ananda. Your inherent nature is Ananda. You're blissful. You don't like misery. That's why. Nobody in this world likes to be miserable. You don't like misery. Look at all actions. All actions are only to come out of misery. We
So the
try different
Prakriti
ways.
will keep pushing you towards that.
So you keep doing. See, there is a simple virus program that has been built in. Or I would put it as antivirus. A simple antivirus program. You don't like misery. That's all. There you go. Now you do whatever. You think, okay, I will figure out. So you do marriage, you figured out. You did children, you figured out. So, okay, that is not the answer. So now, where is the permanent solution? So see, naturally it leads to jnana. Naturally it brings bhakti, vairagya. Because
One may take more turns.
Yeah. Whatever turn you take. Because eventually you will end up there, no? Eventually you realize that I did, but still I'm not satisfied. Because until you're satisfied, trupti. See, till when will you keep eating? Until you feel, abha, I'm done now. No more I can have. Till then you keep eating. Once when you've had enough, does somebody have to teach you how much to eat? No, you know it. So, where is that trupti? Within you. You know it. Nobody will ever come to you and say that now hereby we announce you to be realized. That's never going to happen. Because it is not a matter of world recognizing.
Sorry. It's also possible that you cannot get contentment in this lifetime, right?
Again, that depends upon, the trupti, therefore, is not a matter of all the various conditioning and deconditioning that has to happen. If the conditioning is that, oh, this can never happen in this lifetime, it may not happen. Again, that's why the right kind of conditioning has to go in. The right kind of clarity has to go in. Who has to get liberated? So whenever there is a question, in this lifetime it may not happen. The question is, who is that who is asking the question that it can never happen? Who thinks that, I am not going to get liberated? So again, go back to that question. So like that, when will this all end? It ends when there is a deeper and clearer, unmistakable inner silence, inner clarity. That is Sthita Pragnatva. Unshakable. Now it has become unshakable. It's as unshakable as, do I have a finger? It is unshakable. I have a finger, I know it. Nobody has to come and give me clarity about that.
Yeah. Mm.
Am I living? Unshakable. I know it. So unshakable clarity is Sthita Pragnatva. So to put it in the grace way, yes, everybody has the divine grace. Everybody is naturally tending towards that. They may take here and there turns and twists, but that's all the divine Maya. You know, why they take that turn, why they take this turn. In the turn only, there is so much of wonderful nature of life now. The creative expression of life is, all these are creative expressions of life. In that there is, wow. You know, the same statement, somebody can look at it this way also. Wow. The same situation, somebody can act in this way. Wow. I was yesterday telling you that nurse, no? There's a terrorist, there is a threat on your life. She did not run away and hide herself in the basement. She thought of, how can I save all these other women? Wow. You know, the same situation, somebody runs away and then hides and is shivering. Wow. So that is where, you know, Padmaji's point is, oh, isn't it grace that, you know, she for a moment was propelled in that direction? Yes, in a way. But in a way, in that moment, she still had to choose. In that little moment, she still had to choose. In that way, there is a good deed being done. So when that choice is given, you can be liberated or you can continue to be in bondage. You can be in this Maya or you can come out of the Maya. Life is constantly giving us that choice every moment. And when I choose something, it may be at that moment not complete clarity. So when you read that nurse's story, she still says that though in that moment I acted so bravely, later I had nightmares. So the very fact that the nightmares are coming and I'm getting shivering up and I'm still feeling afraid means that still there is a lack of clarity. So, but still there is a awareness. Oh, there is something far more bigger than, you know, that shiveringness that has come into her. So now it is for her to work on that. So you see, so these two are not in conflict with each other. Is there only grace or is there free will? Both are coexisting. Only the mind wants to say, okay, it is only free will or it is grace.
Yeah. And I think even what Sarananji was telling about the conditioning, no, even this is also part of a little bit of conditioning only, right? Where from childhood, she would have understood that, you know, keeping others safe, protecting others is again something which has been imparted to her.
The seed has come into you. How the seed came into you, nobody knows.
Yeah. Correct. So all three are working together.
See, that's why everything in the past is for good only. Even if that seed hasn't been come to you, let's say in a good way, you did something nasty and somebody beat you up so much that, you know, you had lost your limb. Next time you may remember that. Oh, and you do a little small good thing and, you know, you give a little bit of water to somebody and they feel, oh, thank you very much. That niceness, that trupti is unmistakable. Is unmistakable. When you caused pain, that pain is unmistakable. When you caused trupti, it is unmistakable. So you are already that. That's why you can recognize. See, no amount of anybody speaking Vedanta or Bhagavad Gita or, you know, all that wouldn't make you convinced. When do you really feel convinced? You know, Saravanji used that. I have to be convinced, right? When do you feel convinced? When it is true and agreeable with your inner nature. Then only, right, this is right. Not right coming out of the mind, which is deciding length, okay, measure 4 inch or 5 inch, okay. That is all in the domain of the mind. No, This recognition is far more deeper. It is inherent. It is inherent. Your mind is only reflecting that inherent nature, that trupti, atma trupti, santrupti is deep within you. So there is unmistakable clarity that guides you. So you do a mistake, you feel the pain. What is guilt? Guilt is where, okay, something that is me only I have heard. That's why it has become a guilt. You're not hurting somebody else. When you hurt others, you actually hurt yourself deeply. That's why it manifests as a deep. That's why it manifests as a fear. That's why it manifests as a aggression. It's all deeply you're causing an infliction on yourself. So that's why when all this goes away, when the right step is taken, then for a moment you feel, when I went truly, and when I shed my tears of forgiveness, and that has come from deeply from within, then only I feel unburdened. So does somebody have to teach all this? No, life is nature is to be a good teacher. So nature is a teacher in different ways. That's why, when we said Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, the interpretation we saw is that Guru is in all beings. That Guru is in all beings. Our enemies are our greatest gurus. Our naysayers are our greatest gurus. The ones who inflict pain on us are our greatest gurus. Guru doesn't have to teach in only one way. But Guru is all that is. Grace is all that is. You are in an ocean of grace all the time. Recognition may happen at different times. But in ultimate recognition, there is no other. So where is the question of somebody else? So Gnana, Bhakti and Karma are not so the wonderful story you all know of Hanuma and Rama. What is your relationship to Rama? He was asked in Adhyata Ramayana. He says, when I'm serving in the world, when I have the body consciousness, I serve with the attitude of I'm serving Rama. Because that purifies me. That purifies my mind. I am not the doer. I'm doing this because I have been privileged to with all the whatever the tools and equipments and the capabilities that I've received. I'm just purely privileged. I don't know how I got here, but I'm privileged. I got here. So let me make the best use of this. I'm the servant of Rama. When I close my eyes and I'm sitting in for meditation, in the beginning, I start merger with Rama. So I start becoming one with Rama. So there's still a recognition of I'm becoming one with Rama. Then in the Samadhi, only Rama is. So dissolution of the ego self is the path to the ultimate reality. Dissolution means not necessarily, oh no, I am nobody, I don't want to do, not like that. Sarvanji dropped. Sarvanji dropped, that's why he came back, yeah.
Yeah, I'm connected back.
Yeah. So dissolution means refining that ego self as a limited being to unlimited. So either zero or infinite, both are the ways. I am nobody, you are everything is the zero, complete zero. No iota of doubt. A small baby has no iota of doubt on the mother. Zero. Infinite. I am in everything. So you are me, I am you. So I see the reflection of me in you. So that is infinite. Where is that? Where is you? Everything so infinite. So either zero or you are infinite. Both are the same. Brahma means fully expanded consciousness. Brahmana. Brahma. Fully expanded consciousness. Or nothing consciousness. Zero and infinite. And they are not in dichotomy. They are not in conflict with each other. Zero or infinite. They both are existing at the same time. It's like the dead center of the fan and the revolving parts of the fan. There is no dichotomy there. There is no separateness there. They are in complete harmony with each other all the time. So Purnamada Purnamidam. Shall we end our today's contemplation?
Yeah, Vijayji. So, yeah. So just to recap, where so we started with the different ways of knowing, and where it's going to lead next is to know what is world.
Correct.
Jagat.
Yeah.
So how do I know Jagat? That is where this is the steps, building blocks basically given, that like you can know in like these different ways, direct and indirect. And now next we will move is, okay, how do I know Jagat? Like what is that I see? Do I is it, am I seeing it right? Am I knowing it right? So that's where we will start next.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay.
So let me bring up the prayer. Can you please unshare?
Yeah. I also remembered when you were talking the story of Narada.
Yeah.
Right. Going back to the Padmaji's discussion, right? How long it will take. Narada wished to know the power of Maya. Then like one day he'll remember, and then like will be back. Right, nice story. Yeah.
Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead me from untruth to truth, darkness to light, impermanence to permanence. May this be the guiding light in every moment of our life. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, that is complete, and this is complete. When completeness is removed from completeness, what remains is also complete. When completeness is added to completeness, once again the totality remains complete. And whenever there is lack of clarity about this, may the previous mantra guide me back to this totality all the moments, because this totality is what is all the moment. Nanu nanembudu nanalla ideha manabuddhi nanalla Satchidanandatma Shivananunane Shivoham Shivoham Shivoham. I'm not this body, mind and intellect. I'm the pure consciousness, Shiva Swarupi. This is the ultimate truth. Atmadarshanam Satyada Brahmadarshanam Brahmadarshanam Satyadarshanam. Like already Padmaji said, recognition of the self is the only true path of liberation. And recognition of the self, now that we have done the first 2 chapters of Tattva Bodha, Jagad Utpatti. So who I am is clear. Now what is this world? What is my connection to the world? Because as you have been hearing, it's the same Viveka that we used to recognize the self is what we are using to recognize the world. So recognition of the self is recognition of the whole. Because what is whole? Me and the world. So recognition of me and the world ends the picture, completes the picture. So recognition of the self is recognition of the whole. Because first we have to be very clearly established in self, in who I am. Then what is this world? What is my connection to the world? And then there is only is. And that recognition of the whole is the truth. Tat Sat. That truth. Truth is. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanat Mrutyor Mukshiya Mamrutat. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanat Mrutyor Mukshiya Mamrutat. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanat Mrutyor Mukshiya Mamrutat. We worship the three-eyed one who is fragrant and who nourishes all. And that is the grace that is ever flowing in all the things that we are having in life. And may that grace help us to fall off from this bondage when it is right, as the fruit falls off when it is ripe. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Lokaha samastaha sukhino bhavantu. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Thank you. See you next Sunday. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om, sir. Thank you.
Hari Om.